Hey y'all, Melissa here at Twin Oaks Family Farm in rural southeast Ohio, USA, doing an update after the conclusion of the second flock of Cornish Rock Cross meat chickens for us here at Twin Oaks Family Farm, rural southeast Ohio, USA. We appreciate you joining us on our YouTube channel, Twin Oaks Farm Poultry. So it's May 28th, 2024, and we hauled Cornish Rock Cross meat chickens to the processor early this morning. We decided not to do any recording of that. It just goes quicker and easier. There's 5 of us in our household, and it just goes so much quicker and easier when all 5 of us have hands on deck, really hands-on with actually loading the birds and getting the count and putting the crates in the truck. But wanted to fill you in on how the flock turned out and where I'm estimating production costs at this point in time on that flock. So a lot of our viewers have been following that flock here with us. Like I said, that was our second flock of 2024 for the Cornish Rock Cross meat chickens. We're doing 6 flocks this year. That's what's scheduled, barring any unforeseen circumstances that could change anything, but that's what we're scheduled for. And so this morning we loaded birds at 4:30 a.m. We got up at 4, got out to the barn, loaded birds. We leave overhead light on all night. So, when we walked into the barn, we had overhead light on already. We don't turn the lights off to do loading. We just work calmly and efficiently, work fairly quickly, but we don't cause the birds to be in a rush or be in a stir. We gradually just kind of more or less corner them basically, but we kind of set our transport crates onto the floor inside their building in their pen in a way that is keeping them in about 1/5 of the space that they have, so that they're not running all over the building, they're not getting anxious, not getting stressed out, and we're able to just very efficiently, bend down, pick a bird up, put it into its crate, bend down, get another one, put it into its crate. So we're also not creating a chase where we're running the birds around the building. So we got out there about 4:30 and we proceeded, to get started loading them. So I was accurate on my count. This week I kind of got mixed up, like, was I off by 1? Was I 1 too many? Was I 1 too short? But according to our paperwork, we had 122 that would be going to the processor as of their day 36. So today they were 37 days old, and in fact when we loaded and counted, we did have 122 Cornish Rock Cross meat chickens. So to give you an idea on where we estimate in production cost at on these birds, the math on the cost of the chicks, the cost of the feed, the cost of some bedding, which we had minimal bedding with this flock because we already had a flock before them that we had done deep litter bedding with. So we were able to utilize and recondition most of that bedding that was in there, and we were able to move the flock around the building because it was only putting the building at about 1/3 capacity on stocking density. So that really helped us really use up and utilize the bedding, get a lot of mileage out of it. So bedding wasn't very much expense for this flock at all. So the chicks, the feed, the bedding, really only putting that into it, we came out to about $5.29 a bird, about $5.29 per bird on production cost just in the barn, chicks, feed, bedding. Now if we would add a little bit for electricity use and water use, it's going to bump it up slightly, but probably negligible. So I'm not going to figure it in right now. I might when we get our processing numbers back, but I'm not going to figure it in right now. So right now I'm going by like $5.29 a bird production cost, and then we could also add in, like, we had $50 in fuel to take the birds to the processor, and we're going to have $50 in fuel to pick the birds up from the processor. So let's go ahead and round it up to say $6 a bird, just production cost in and out of the barn. Okay, now you could choose to butcher and process your own birds, and then you would have basically zero cost in having your birds processed. after you got, whatever supplies you needed. Once you get that infrastructure kind of set up, then it's not going to cost you to pay for that professional service. But we choose to take the birds to a professional processor that is USDA inspected, and in general, we can pretty much expect the processing cost to double our production cost. So again, until I have numbers back on our actual invoice at the processor, we're kind of estimating, but at this point, we're basically estimating about $6 a bird on production costs. We are out of that flock. We are only getting boneless, skinless chicken breast, wings, and ground chicken patties. That's what we're having made out of that flock. So the more economical way to do it would have been to just have everything made into whole chickens. If we would do that, so if we'd taken all 122 of those birds up to the processor and only had everything made into whole chickens, I think we would be in and out of there at about a total of probably about $350. But the last flock we took, we did it basically the same, doing chicken breast, wings, and ground patties. And we also got all the extras, like all the giblets, gizzards, hearts, liver, and all the chicken feet and all the chicken carcasses. They call them backs or frames because they still have a little bit of meat you can cook down and pick off of them. And then you can also slow cook those frames or backs for chicken broth. So we kept everything, and that bill was just at $1,000 for about the same amount of birds. So we're cutting out the extras on this flock, and hopefully, we're getting that bill down to about $800. But it's still gonna about double our production costs. So wanted to give you the numbers on that. Gonna go over to the egg chickens. I need to check eggs one last time today in both of the hen houses. So you're welcome to join me. And after I do that, I hope you'll stick around, because after I do that, we had a great question posted from a viewer about how do we find a processor, and I'll just try to answer that quickly at the end of this video. So let's take a little walk. I need to change the way I'm holding the camera anyway. Let's take a little walk over to the hen house. We'll try to go into both hen houses and check for eggs. So this is a hen house that is mostly a group of older girls. It's gonna take me a moment to deal with the door. I didn't have that done ahead of time. Not too bad though. So for now, we'll just go in, see the girls, and count, because I can't usually take care of the camera and the eggs at the same time. So actually, silver hen is the only one in the nest box right now. I've already been in here and got over a dozen eggs once today. They may be laying later in the day, and this house may be about done. We've had a lot of fluctuating weather, but we've had some really hot temperatures, and sometimes that'll put our gals off on their laying quantity. The production was looking in their bucket. They do have water in there, and so those gals actually have drinking hardware fastened into the bottom of their bucket, and that's how they get. I couldn't see what that looked like. It'll be interesting to see what that looks like when I play this back, but that's how they get water. Right here, yes, all these right here are the young ones, the young 12 that we put into here. There's one of them though. So this pen has changed a little bit here in the last month. We did have 32 hens that were all, mostly like these Isa Browns, and just less than a handful of other breeds, such as that one. But there was 32 of them. And then we had 12, which they're pretty much lined up, and there she is. They're pretty much lined up right there at the feeder, because they're younger. They're last to get into the feeder. The old girls don't let them in until they've eaten their fill. But we had 12 of these young ones. So we put them in here while we still had a household of 32. So then we had, what's that make you? 44, 32 and 12. And aren't they pretty? Though they're pretty. There are two leghorns, but that one's a different. See how she drinks from there? So yeah. Now it's moving around, but she'll still get it. Isn't that neat? So at any rate, so had the 44 in here, and it was a little much for the size of this pen, and so we ended up selling 12 of the Isa Browns, which is great. They went to a great home, really, really pleased that got to work out that way. We didn't need to take them to a sale. Isn't that cool? You're getting to see them use that drinking hardware. So you can make that. You can actually buy that hardware and kind of fabricate your own bucket. So we are getting a little leakage off of that. That's never been the case. So we are going to have to look and see if anything needs replaced. But the black ones right there on the left, black copper marins, they're really pretty. There's an Americana beside her. So anyway, those 12 are hens. They're young, they're not laying yet, but they will hopefully by like July, maybe July or August. So variety of breeds there, but they're real pretty. But selling the 12 Isa Browns got this pen back into balance. So we're back to 30. We're actually at 31 here. And there's silver hen. Okay, so we're gonna back out of there because they're not eggs. So we did, I'm gonna turn this back around. Okay, so we did check eggs in there earlier. So I don't know, maybe we're not gonna get any more eggs out of there today, but we'll go over to the production red house. Go over to the production red house, see if they've got some eggs for us, and then I'll tell you that last thing that I wanted to tell you about the processor, okay? So, I'm going to take a look at the production reds. There they are. We had to put a board up. They were doing a lot of dust bathing, and they've got this real well worked up. Their deep litter bedding, their floor material. Aren't they pretty? I think they're so pretty. These are production reds. So, they were kicking all the floor material out the door, and you couldn't get the door shut. So anyway, so they've already had eggs checked in here as well. We did get over a dozen. I always look back in this corner behind the roost. There's none there right now. We've got a girl sunning herself, and there's sometimes one in this corner. There is one in this corner, so I'll be coming back to get it. She was sunning herself. There were some in the boxes earlier today, but there's not now. And down here, there are eggs. Gals, you want to move? So there's one. There's at least 3 back there. So, and they do, there's at least 4 there. That's their favorite place in this pen to lay their eggs. So I'll be gathering those up. But we do have a few more eggs in here. We are staying totally sold out on eggs. There is one outside. Can y'all see her? I don't know if she'll come in. This group of hens does not go outside very frequently. So we like to see them venture outside, but they seem to like it inside. So at any rate, okay, so we want to wrap up and tell you about, we had a question about how did we find a processor for our meat chickens. Now these chickens we keep, that you're looking at right now, we keep them solely for egg production. I'll come back in a minute after we're done recording and get those eggs, but we'll finish up out here. Those production reds, the other hen house, we keep those hens. I'm looking to make sure there's not a snake. This is where we found some here, but we had let the weeds grow up right here, and we had some scrap lumber here, and so we've cleared that debris. And in general, that helps with any kind of snake control. If they just don't have a place to take cover, they're probably not going to hang out there. So anyway, we got this great question from a viewer. How did we find a processor? And that really is a good question, because when we started raising meat chickens, we were kind of at a loss on that. How do you find a processor? Where do you go? What do you do? What kind of processor do we need? Are there different kinds? So we're already familiar. We raise beef cattle. We raise hogs part of the year. So as a family farm operation, and we don't go to that farm and film. It's a couple miles from here. Record. I go back to my age on film, saying film instead of record, but that farm's a couple miles away from here, and we don't record there. Now, interestingly enough, though, I'll show you something before I finish with that reference to the question. Just past that tree line there, just the tree line is just a narrow band, and just on the other side of it is actually neighbor's property, but it's some property that my husband farms, because they have an arrangement where the neighbor lets the family farm rent from them. So as far as the family farm, it does crops too, in addition to the livestock. And I thought I heard my husband say the other day they're up to about 200 acres planting ground that they have amassed with what's at the farm and what's available to them from rental. So, so that's pretty neat. And they've got spring planting done for this year. So spring crops are in. So that's a good feeling. But on that question, how do you find a processor? Like I said, it really stumped us when we first started raising the Cornish Rock Cross meat chickens. We did initially just butcher and process them ourselves. And then at some point in that adventure, we decided we want to really specialize on getting good at raising them start to finish. We want to focus on the start, grow, and finish, and we want to source out the processing to somebody else. So like I said, with the birds we just saw, the production reds, with the other hen house, they are just kept strictly for eggs. And when we're done with like a group of these hens, and done in terms of they've aged out of our system, we don't have any desire to take them to a processor. We don't have any desire to home process them, to butcher them here. We would prefer, because at the point that we're ready to age them out of our egg production system, they're still very young. So we would prefer to rehome them to a place where they're gonna, like maybe a family, I think, sorry, I'm stepping in and out of that lighting there, but we like to rehome the egg production birds to like a place where they can be a family source of fresh farm fresh eggs, or you know, homestead fresh eggs. So the only ones that we're dealing with on going to a processor is the meat birds. And when we decided to make that shift from processing them ourselves for ourselves over to sourcing it out to a professional processor, because we wanted to focus on getting really good at start, grow, and finish them, and have that meat able to be direct marketed to clients in our local area, we said, what do we do? So basically we didn't know where to start, and we just went online, and we're in Ohio, so we went online and we researched USDA inspected poultry processors in Ohio. So I kind of had lost my train of thought, saying, you know, we're familiar with processors for beef, we're familiar with processors for pork. It's a little different with processors for poultry, because a lot of the other processors for, like I said, for beef and pork, they're state inspected. And so with poultry, you may, you know, to get a USDA inspected poultry product, that's a federal inspection. So it's a little bit different. So that's why, you know, there's not usually necessarily poultry processing lumped in with the beef processor or the pork processor. A lot of times the same place will butcher and process beef, cattle, and hogs for pork, but won't do chicken. And that's probably why, because those operations can usually operate on a state inspection, whereas inspected poultry is federal domain, I guess is a word you could use there. So anyway, so for Ohio, we looked up USDA inspected poultry processors in Ohio, looked that up online, and like 3 came up for the whole state. And so to our knowledge, ones that are accessible by the general public, there's about 3 USDA inspected poultry processors in the state of Ohio, and we've been told there's not very many throughout the United States. So you just have to kind of look. I could also say it would probably be worthwhile to ask local feed mill, local farm supply store, local agricultural extension agent, other poultry farmers in your local area, if anybody knows of poultry processors. You might find a custom processor for poultry that will do just your order, not an order that you're intending to sell to other people. I don't know, but I know that that's how we found the one we use. We did some online research, and we're fortunate. So of the 3 that came up, we picked the closest one. We called them, and we tried to get to know what's the routine there and how do we become a client. And so that's how it started. And now I think we're in our 3rd year of taking our poultry to them. We go to Pleasant Valley Poultry in Baltic, Ohio. And so they're a processor. They also raise Cornish Rock Cross meat chickens, and they have a retail shop. So, you know, they know what they're doing. We're confident they know what they're doing, and we have a great working relationship with them, and really think a lot of them. So you just, as far as I know, if you need a poultry processor, you just need to do some research, but you also need to plan ahead and start early, because at least our experience here, those poultry processors tend to book up quickly and tend to stay booked throughout the calendar year. So like, for example, for us, for 2024, we knew we had about 6 dates throughout the year, stretching the whole calendar. Like our first one, I think our first processing date might have been an April date, and which meant, we were starting the birds back in March sometime probably, and then I think we have a December date. So we asked for dates that spanned the whole calendar year, and we set that up Thanksgiving time of 2023. So definitely do your research, contact the potential processor, ask the questions you need to ask, find out the routine there, and try to plan way ahead and try to get your reservation in early. So that would be our advice on that. Thanks for joining us at Twin Oaks Family Farm.